Having a 1.0 KD makes you an average player. Having a 2.0 puts you in the top 10% of all players. Now, can you guess what makes you in the top 1% of all players? It might not be as much as you think. Having a 2.08 KD puts you in the top 1% of all players. In this video, I'm going to give you guys an easy to follow system that will help you increase your KD in solos and make you a better player overall. My name is Mint and I used to have a 1.3 KD back in Verdansk, and now in Caldera I'm playing at a 2.09 KD. Now sure, I'm not the greatest player ever and I'm not a pro player by any means, but having a 2.09 KD puts me into the top 1% of all players. So I know a few things and I want to share that with you so you can increase your KD as well. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that sub button, and if you enjoyed this and found this helpful, make sure you guys hit that like button. Now before we get into the video, let me know in the comments where your KD is right now and where do you want to be. Now let's get right into the video, guys. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you have the right sensitivity. I've seen a lot of players that either have a too high of a sensitivity or too low of a sensitivity. So in order to find the right sensitivity for you, there's two things you can do to be on the right track. The first is the 180 test. This is on mouse and keyboard. If you can 180 with one flick, you're pretty close to your perfect sensitivity. So I'm gonna 180 to this door and see how close I can get every single time. If you always land before the door, that means your sense is too slow and you want to kick it up a little bit. If you land too far away from the door, that means your sense is too high and you want to turn it down. You want to keep doing this until you feel comfortable with your sense. So keep doing that and see how close you can get to the door without going over or falling behind. So that will put you on the right track of finding your perfect sense. Now another test you can do to see if your aim is on the right track is to do the flick test. So you want to find an object that's in the middle of your screen and you want to find two different objects that are on the both sides of your screen. So let's say I'm going to use this as my right side object and I'm going to use this tower as my left side object, and this is going to be my middle point, this building right here. What you want to do is flick to the right and come back to the middle and see how close you get to the right object. If you go too far, then your sense is too high. If you don't reach the object, then your sense is too low. You want to do the same thing for the left side as well. And if your sense is too high, make sure you lower it. And if it's too slow, make sure you higher it. And you want to keep doing this until you feel comfortable flicking on both sides. Now this isn't guaranteed to find you the perfect sense, but it is putting you on the right path. Now that you're a little bit closer to finding the right sense, the more you play, the better you will understand how your sensitivity works. You can feel if you can't stay on target. You will know if you're overextending or underextending. But that should help you find the right sensitivity so you can stay on target longer and potentially win more gunfights. So now that we have a little bit more control on our sensitivity, the next thing I want you to do is play Rebirth Island. Now I know you watched a lot of videos on how to increase your KD, and almost all of them mention playing Rebirth Island, and there's a reason for that. Rebirth Island helps you get battle experience much faster than normal solos. Instead of waiting around a minute or two to get into the game and then loot for 5 minutes and then end up dying to a guy camping, you can keep coming back as long as your teammates are alive and keep getting into gunfights so you can improve crucial skills that will help you increase your KD in Warzone. Now you might be saying, Mint, I don't have any friends.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
Well, that makes the two of us, but I want you to play with random players. Ignore them if you have to, just do your own thing and work on these 3 skills that I'm going to tell you to. In my opinion, these are the top 3 skills that are crucial to becoming a better Warzone player. So these 3 skills include your gun skills, your movement, and your positioning. It's very important you develop these skills before moving on, because later on, as your KD goes higher, you're gonna go against higher KD players. And if your gun skills and your movement is lacking, you're gonna hit a brick wall when your KD gets higher and higher. And since Warzone is such a low time to kill game, even the slightest mistake can end up costing your life. So stick with me as I go through these 3 skills and what you should be working on while playing Rebirth Island. So for your gun skills, I want you to focus on 3 main things: centering your crosshair, when to hip fire, and recoil control. Now centering is a term mainly used for snipers, but it also applies to other guns as well. It's basically when you have your crosshair centered to the screen or where you think the enemy is gonna appear from. So let's say I'm running down the hallway and I think the enemy is gonna come from the door right in front of me. Instead of looking at the ground or the sky, your crosshair should be on the door, so you're ready to aim down sight right when the guy pops up. I've seen a lot of players who are running around in the open looking at the ground or looking at the sky. There's nobody there, my guy. You should be looking at where you think the enemy will pop up from. So let's say I'm running around in the open and there's a building right in front of me and there's a window that I usually know the guy can pop up from. Instead of looking at the ground or looking somewhere else, your crosshair should be on that window. So if the guy actually pops up, all you have to do is aim down sight and shoot. You want to eliminate that little movement where you go from the ground to the window, because that will cost you your life. In Warzone, if you can get the first shot off, you'll most likely win that gunfight. And if you're taking time to move your crosshair all the way to the window, that little window of time gives the other guy to shoot at you first, then you can shoot at him. So it's very important that you realize where your crosshair is when you're playing Warzone. Always be mindful where you're placing your crosshair and make sure you're placing it where you think the enemy will come from. Now, the other thing I want you to work on regarding your gun skills is your hip fire. Now, I've seen a lot of players go straight to aim down sight no matter how close the player is. Even if the other player's dump truck is on your face, people are still aim down sight. And that causes your camera to zoom in because you're aim down sight already and the player has already slipped past you, causing you to miss those few first shots, potentially losing that gunfight. So instead of going right to your aim down sight, I want you to start hip firing, and once the enemy stops moving, then you aim down sight and lock in that kill. Now, number 3 when it comes to gun skills is recoil control. Recoil control is one of the biggest things you can master when it comes to FPS games. And Call of Duty doesn't even have a lot of recoil when it comes to all these FPS games. If you look at Valorant, Apex, CSGO, their recoil is much more harder to control than Call of Duty. In Call of Duty, all the recoil does is goes up, so all you have to do is pull down. And it's as simple as that, and the faster you learn the recoil for all of these guns, the more shots you can hit on target, which will help you kill the enemy faster. So those are the 3 things I want you to work on when it comes to gun skills in Rebirth. Centering your crosshair, hipfire accuracy, and recoil control. Now, the second skill I want you to develop while playing Rebirth is working on your movement. I want you to slide cancel, I want you to bunny hop, and I want you to hip slide, break those cameras. Now, I'm not telling you to be Joe Woe, but even a little bit of movement can help your enemy miss shots and make you live longer and win that gunfight. If you're having trouble side cancelling, try using auto tack sprint. I know it can be a pain pressing the button every time you'd want to tack sprint, so if you're having trouble with that, try using auto tack sprint and see how that works for you. I've actually recently started using it and I really like how that feels. Now let me show you some of the movements I want you to practice while you're playing in Rebirth. Alright, so the first movement I want you to focus on is moving while shooting. I want you to move left and right while you stay on target, and I want you to practice that until you got it perfect. This will help you become a harder target to hit while you're staying on your enemy and they're missing their shots, but you're hitting all of your shots. After you gotten comfortable moving left and right while aiming down sight and shooting at the enemy, the next thing I want you to add is jumping while doing the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's left or right, I want you to jump while you're staying on target. This is gonna help you become an even harder target to hit because you're gonna be dodging their bullets because they're gonna be going underneath your feet, or even if they are hitting their shots, they're gonna be hitting your legs, which do less damage than your chest or head, while you're hitting their chest or leg if they're not moving, right? So the next thing I want you to practice is your hip sliding. Now what I mean by that is I want you to slide right by the enemy's hip. So let's say there's a player right here and he's gonna push me because he saw me and I know he's there. So instead of just challenging this right on and losing this gunfight, what you want to do is go back into cover. So now he thinks you're running away and what he's going to do is push right towards you. You're going to wait a few seconds and you're going to slide right back out and look back and start shooting at the guy. Since the guy's going to be running towards you this way to track you down, his aim is going to be looking this way. So if you slide right back out this way, he's going to have a harder time to track you and get his aim back on you. This is what we call hip sliding and help you break a lot of cameras, especially if the enemy is on controller, because it's harder left flick and right if you're on controller than if you're on mouse and keyboard. So I want you to keep mastering this hip slide until you feel super comfortable with your movement. So those are some of the movements you can do to make you a harder target to hit. There's a lot more depth when it comes to movement, but I'm not going to go over all of those in this video. If you want me to make a movement guide, let me know in the comments below and I'll do that for you guys. But moving on to the third skill I want you to work on while playing Rebirth is your positioning. Now in order to increase your KD, we want to lower those deaths. Especially deaths that come with no kills. Those are a killer to your KD. And the way to do that is to get easy kills. Now what I mean by getting easy kills is holding down power position and letting your enemy run into you. This especially comes in handy in those late game situations, especially in solos where players don't really like to move around a lot. So if you can get to a power position and the players are forced to move because of the storm, they'll likely make some mistakes like running around in the open, leading to you getting easier kills. And positioning isn't all about holding power positions, it's also knowing when and where to take a fight. I've seen so many players come out of the cover just to stand in the open to shoot at an enemy that's also in the open. Now yeah, that might seem like a good idea because you caught the enemy off guard because he's in the open, but you also don't have any cover, and if you miss a few shots and the enemy doesn't, you're most likely gonna die in that situation. So always remember to have cover no matter where you are. Always think about your next piece of cover even if you're traveling out in the open. Have that in the back of your mind. Where are you gonna get cover if somebody starts shooting at you right now? Is it that rock in front of you, that tree on the left side? Where is your first movement gonna be to help you not die in that situation? And it's okay to stop a gunfight midway if you feel like you're losing. You don't have to commit to a gunfight fully, especially since you're close to cover. If you feel like you're gonna lose that gunfight or if you're taking too much damage, get into cover, pop back out and start shooting again instead of just continue to shoot until one of the persons dies. In Verdansk, positioning was important, but it's even more important now in Caldera. With those high grounds and low grounds, it's super important for you to be always on the high ground rather than fighting your way upwards and shooting upwards. So focus on getting easier kills by holding power positions, letting the enemy run to you, and knowing when and where to get cover. Rebirth is a small map, so it's super important for you to be in the right position at the right time so you can get more kills. You don't want to be the guy running around on the road while there's a team on top of a rooftop shooting down at you. No matter how good you are, you're most likely gonna lose that fight. So put yourself in positions to win more gunfights. So now that you've been playing Rebirth a lot and focusing on those 3 skills that I told you to focus on, I want you to keep playing Rebirth until you feel confident in your movement, in your gun skills, and you feel like you can win some fights even if you're at a disadvantage. Now I know it's gonna be hard in Rebirth, especially since that's a team mode and you're typically gonna be against 2v1s, 3v1s, 4v1s, and there's gonna be a lot of dying and a lot of frustration, but that's how you get better. So stick to this a little while and I promise you're gonna improve as a player overall. Now that you're not scared to take on gunfights and you're more comfortable taking on fights, I want you to hop into solos and pick a landing spot. Once you pick the landing spot, I want you to master that spot. Now what I mean by mastering that spot is I want you to learn how players rotate in and out of that spot. Where do campers like to sit and where will the loadout drop after the first circle? Not only that, I want you to learn the spawns of the buy stations. Once you keep landing at the same spot, all these things are going to come more clear to you. You're going to know where players typically like to land or where they like to sit. For example, I picked airfield and I always land airfield and I know where people like to sit. I usually land in the back where the camps are, and a lot of players like to go to that red big tower or the building right next to the camps. So I know to look out for those places. And as for buy stations, I've also memorized where some of the buy station spawns are. Sometimes they're close to that building right next to the camps, and sometimes they're on the other side of the strip. Now they're not going to be in the same spot every single game, but once you've mastered one spot, you'll typically know where buy stations are usually supposed to be. Now why am I making such a big deal about buy station is because I want you to use that cash. Stop hoarding cash like this is real life. You're not making it alive with that cash. It's better to be broke and alive than be dead and rich. So use that cash on UAVs. Not many players are using Ghost in this new map because they can't afford to get 2 loadouts. Especially in the beginning of the game where nobody should have Ghost because the loadout drops after the first circle. So take that to your advantage, pop a UAV, clear out your landing spot so you feel safer. Even if there's nobody on the minimap, at least you'll feel safer because you know nobody's around you. And now if there's somebody on the minimap, you can catch them off guard because they won't be expecting you to push so quick. Now I know some people want to save that money for their loadout, but if you're dead, what's the point of having that money? And if you're trying to increase your KD, you need to get kills consistently. And one of the biggest things that's going to help you with that is having UAVs. Popping UAVs is going to be a huge help to you because you know where players will be. Now all you have to do is, if you have your UAV popped, use your gun skills, positioning, and your movement that you practice on Rebirth Island to get that kill. Now that you're staying alive longer because you're clearing out your landing spot, you know where people are going to rotate because you're landing on the same spot every single time, and you're using UAVs to pick out players around you, you're living longer and getting kills. The next step is mastering the end game when you get there. Now since this is the end game, a lot of more players will have Ghost, so you won't be able to track a lot of these players down with their UAVs. So mastering the end game all comes down to positioning and where you are relative to the circle. Now of course there's some RNG and you can't always predict where the circle is gonna go since this is a battle royale, but learning power positions and staying at those power positions can help you stay alive longer and get you more kills. Like I talked about in Rebirth Island, mastering your positioning can help you get easier kills. Let other players make the choice of rotating. Instead of running and gunning in the end game, I want you to slow down your game, hold a power position. Because if you're running and gunning in the end game or running away from the circle, you're eventually gonna get your cheeks clapped by a bush camper who's slowly crouching his way into the circle.
Don't do drugs. If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
And trust me, that's one of the worst feelings in Warzone. I've been through that many times. Another thing I like to do in the end game is visualizing where all the players are gonna be. Since there are gonna be 10 or less players, you have to visualize where all these players are gonna be on the map based on the circle. Where would you be if you were in that spot? Now that you've mastered a spot in solos, you're using your UAVs to find more players and get the drop on them instead of them getting the drop on you, and you're playing your positioning correct and using power positions to get easier kills. All that's left is to use meta guns. Now I know some people hate the word meta, but these guns are being promoted for a reason. They're the best guns in the game. And if you're not using the best guns in the game, the enemy sure is. And no matter how good your aim is, if your gun is doo-doo, you ain't getting that kill, buddy. That's the system I came up with to improve your KD in Warzone. Play Rebirth Island, work on your gun skills, your movement, and your positioning. And finally, drop into solos, pick a spot to land in, master that spot, use your UAVs, and use your positioning to your advantage to get better kills. And then finally, master the end game by mastering power positioning. And not only that, use meta guns to stay competitive. If you want to know the top 5 best long range meta guns to use, click this video. And I hope you found this helpful, and if you did, hit that like button and hit that sub button so you can become better Warzone players together. I'll see you guys in the next video.